We sat down with RC Atlee, who's a luxury agent based out of Hamptons, New York, and he talks about some of the great tips he has in terms of marketing unique listings. He shares some of the most unique listings he's had, one of which had its own converted corporate headquarters in a converted barn. And he also shares the story of how he broke into luxury real estate. You can watch the video now. How did you break into luxury real estate? How did it happen?
It happened accidentally. I got out of school and I was working with, my first job was working in a development company as a historian, an architectural historian, working on a 100-year retrospective of this construction company's work in design and build. And at the end of the project, I ended up staying on and doing some marketing and sales work for them, developing marketing materials. I got licensed, and then I continued to sell, and most of what the builders were working on was high-end stuff.
Right.
And that it was during a real estate market that was incredibly well-fueled in the mid-2000s. So there were lots of buyers at the high end.
Right.
And moving pretty quickly.
So what was the most extravagant or most expensive home that you have listed and have you sold?
Well, I've listed some that were more extravagant than the ones that I've sold, to be honest.
Fair enough.
That got listed but never moved. The most extravagant house that I ever listed had a bowling alley, a ballroom, extensive servants' quarters, and an entire corporate headquarters located in what was a former barn on the property. It was pretty intense, and truly it was really difficult to find a buyer that needed all of the things that this property can accommodate.
Right.
Most people would come in and say, I don't need to have board meetings, 8 paces from my kitchen.
Yeah.
But the right person will. And that was one of my more extravagant properties. I had one that had a speakeasy, which was really cool. It was a house built in the 1920s during Prohibition in the States, and they had outfitted a really extensive Italianate secret bar and a wine cellar with an adjoining film screening room in the catacomb basement of this house.
Right. It always blows my mind at how extravagant these homes can be, but as an agent, how do you seek out the clients that need, say, a bowling alley or a speakeasy or whatever it is that these people initially that have the home have decided to put in the home? How do you find those buyers?
It's a challenge. I think that the best tactic that I can suggest is that media is really your friend. In this day and age, having come from a little bit of a background in media and journalism,
right.
I recognize that most media outlets, especially local ones, are very under-resourced when it comes to writers and photographers. Not that there aren't lots of writers and photographers, there just isn't a lot of budget.
Right.
So if you are able to develop content that's high-end content from within your team or as you're independently as an agent, you've already got a real edge. So I like to differentiate myself because I'm really familiar with preparing press releases. I work with a lot of good photographers, and I'm a photographer myself.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I like to do editorial style press releases, get them into the right hands. And a lot of the time, I'll send things along, and I'm not shocked anymore, but at the beginning I would be shocked that essentially whatever I sent was just given another byline and slightly edited and formatted for their publications and sent right out. And it's because they're really desperate for content if it's good. So when I have something unique like a ballroom or a bowling alley, I make sure that I accentuate that and maybe write some funny, fun copy about it and get it out there, because that's the kind of thing that then is likely to be shared in social media
Right.
or other outlets, person to person, after it's already been released on the internet, or in other print media, etc.
So that kind of segues me into another question of mine, which is, what are some of the challenges that new agents or even seasoned vets would have if they're trying to break into luxury real estate? Issues with trust, trying to build that trust with that kind of clientele, maybe co-listing. Is there any challenges that you can kind of speak to, and how an agent would kind of get around that?
Well, I think that trust is definitely key. I think that ultimately, especially at the high end, you're more likely to be something of a caretaker slash listing agent. For instance, there are houses in the Hamptons, and maybe I'm not supposed to say this. There are plenty of houses in the Hamptons that are unoccupied that I have been in more in the last 6 months than their owners have in the last 6 years.
Right.
So if those people own their property either for a seasonal rental in the Hamptons or for sale, they really trust me or whomever they work with, because you're the person they're going to call to say, hey, there was a horrible storm. Can you let yourself into my house and check things out and look at the property? Because the likeliness is they're busy and they probably don't have a primary residence here.
Right.
So, so trust is very, very important.